The gentle hum of machines filled room 507 at St. Luke's Hospital. Sarah Miller pushed her cleaning cart through the door, just like she did every evening for the past 3 months. The unconscious man in the bed was Ethan Thompson, once new, York's most eligible bachelor and CEO of Thompson Technologies. Now he lay here, lost in a deep sleep, while the world kept turning without him. Sarah pulled up a chair next to his bed. Her simple blue uniform was wrinkled from a long day's work, but she didn't mind. She'd gotten used to spending her breaks in this room, talking to a man who couldn't answer back. "Good evening, Mr. Thompson," she said, pulling out a worn paperback from her cart. "I brought a new book today. I hope you like romance stories." Down the hall, the click of expensive heels announced the arrival of Olivia Rothschild, Ethan's fiancée. Sarah quickly stood up, pretending to clean the windowsill. Olivia burst into the room, followed by a photographer from Society magazine. "Oh, darling," Olivia cried out, carefully dabbing at her eyes to avoid smudging her makeup. "Look what they've done to our wedding plans. Everything was supposed to be perfect." Sarah fought the urge to roll her eyes. She'd seen this performance before. Olivia would stay for exactly 15 minutes, long enough for the photographer to get his shots, then rush off to another social event. True to form, Olivia's phone buzzed. "I have to go, my love. The charity gala won't host itself." She pressed a quick kiss to Ethan's forehead, leaving a perfect lipstick mark. After Olivia left, Sarah gently wiped the lipstick off Ethan's forehead. She could at least use smudge-proof lipstick, she muttered. The night shift was Sarah's favorite time. The hospital quieted down, and she could talk to Ethan without interruption. She told him about her day, about her dreams of becoming a nurse, someday about her little apartment where she lived alone with her cat, Mr. Whiskers. "You know what's strange," she said, adjusting his blanket. "Everyone talks about you like you're just money and business deals. But I wonder about the real you. Do you like dogs? What's your favorite food? Did you really want to marry her?" A knock on the door made Sarah jump. Alexander Thompson, Ethan's older brother, stood there in an expensive suit that probably cost more than she made in a year. "Checking on the patient?" he asked, his smile not reaching his eyes. "Just finishing up," Sarah replied, grabbing her cart. Alexander waited until she left, then pulled out his phone. "Michael, yeah, I'm here now. The board meeting is set for tomorrow. With this new power of attorney, we can start moving assets. No change in his condition. Don't worry, everything's going according to plan." Sarah lingered outside the door, her heart pounding. Something wasn't right. She'd seen enough soap operas to know when someone was up to no good. Later that night, after Alexander left, Sarah returned to Ethan's room. "I don't trust your brother," she whispered. "There's something sneaky about him. I wish you could wake up and see what's happening." She reached for Ethan's hand, something she'd never done before. His skin was warm, alive. "I know I'm just the cleaning lady, but I promise I'll keep an eye on things for you." Just then, Ethan's fingers twitched in her hand. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. The monitors showed no change, but she knew what she'd felt. "Mr. Thompson," she whispered. "Ethan, can you hear me?" The room remained quiet except for the steady beep of machines. But something had changed. Hope, like a tiny spark, had ignited in Sarah's heart. Outside the hospital windows, New York City sparkled in the night. In penthouses and boardrooms, people plotted and planned, thinking they held all the cards. But in room 507, a simple cleaning lady had just become the most important person in a billionaire's life. She just didn't know it yet. Alexander Thompson sat at the head of the conference table in the Thompson Technologies building. The morning. Sun glinted off his gold watch as he shuffled through some papers. Around him, board members whispered among themselves, stealing nervous glances his way. "Gentlemen," Alexander said, standing up, "as my brother's condition shows no improvement, we need to think about the company's future. I have here a power of attorney that Ethan signed last year. It gives me full control of his assets while he's indisposed." Jake Mitchell, Ethan's best friend and head of legal, spoke up. "I don't remember Ethan mentioning this power of attorney." "Why would he?" Alexander smiled coldly. "You're just an employee, Jake. Family matters are private." Jake didn't like this one bit. After the meeting, he headed straight to St. Luke's Hospital. He needed to see Ethan's condition for himself. At the hospital, Sarah was organizing supplies in the storage room when she overheard two nurses talking. "Did you see that fancy lawyer asking about Mr. Thompson's medical records?" one nurse said. "Something fishy is going on with that family." Sarah's stomach tightened. She thought about the conversation she'd overheard between Alexander and someone named Michael. Grabbing her cart, she hurried to room 507. Jake was there, standing by Ethan's bed with a worried look on his face. "Can I help you?" Sarah asked, pretending to check the trash bin. Jake turned around. "Just visiting an old friend." He paused, studying her. "You work here regularly?" Sarah nodded. "Every night." "Notice anything strange?" People asking questions, looking through his things. Sarah bit her lip. Should she tell him what she knew? Before she could decide, Olivia burst into the room. "Jake, what a surprise," Olivia said, air-kissing his cheek. She was wearing a red designer dress that probably cost more than Sarah's yearly salary. "I didn't expect to see you here." "Funny, I was thinking the same about you," Jake replied. "You haven't visited much lately." Olivia's perfectly made-up face hardened for a second. "I've been busy planning our new wedding date. You know how it is, darling, so many details." Sarah pretended to dust the window ledge, not missing how Olivia's hand kept checking her phone, or how she never once touched Ethan. After Olivia left, Jake lingered. "Miss..." He looked at Sarah's name tag. "Miller. If you notice anything unusual, here's my card. Call me anytime." That night, Sarah read to Ethan from her favorite romance novel. "The hero in this book reminds me of you," she said. "Everyone thinks he's just a rich businessman, but he has a good heart. I bet you do too." She touched his hand again, hoping for another response like yesterday. Nothing happened, but she didn't give up. "Your friend Jake seems nice," she continued. "He's worried about you. I think he suspects something's wrong with your brother's plans." Just then, Sarah heard voices in the hallway. She recognized Alexander's voice and another man's she didn't know. "The merger has to happen now, Michael," Alexander was saying. "Once we sell off the tech division, there's no turning back. Even if Ethan wakes up, it'll be too late." "What? About the girlfriend?" the other man asked. "Olivia, please. She's more interested in her social media following than Ethan. Besides, we've made an arrangement she's very happy with." Sarah's hands shook as she grabbed her phone and Jake's business card. This was bigger than she thought. Way bigger. In his bed, Ethan remained still, but the machines showed a slight increase in his heart rate. Somewhere in the darkness of his, mind, was he fighting to wake up? Did he hear the truth about the people he trusted most? Sarah looked at him, her heart aching. "Don't worry," she whispered. "I won't let them get away with this." In the giant Thompson Technologies building downtown, lights burned late into the night. Alexander and his new partner Michael Davis were setting their plans in motion. They thought they had everything under control, but they didn't count on a cleaning lady with a good heart and a lawyer who wouldn't give up on his friend. In the world of power and money, sometimes the smallest players can change the whole game. And in room 507, a lonely heart monitor beeped a little faster, like a countdown to something no one saw coming. Sarah paced back and forth in her tiny apartment, Jake's business card in her hand. It was her day off, but she couldn't stop thinking about what she'd heard at the hospital. Mr. Whiskers, her orange tabby cat, watched her from the worn-out couch. "What should I do, Mr. Whiskers?" she asked. "If I tell Jake what I heard, I could lose my job, but if I don't, Ethan could lose everything." Her phone buzzed. It was a news alert about Thompson Technologies. The headline made her heart stop. "Thompson Tech announces surprise merger. Stocks plummet." That did it. Sarah grabbed her phone and dialed Jake's number. Mitchell speaking. "Mr. Mitchell, this is Sarah Miller from the hospital. We need to talk." They met at a small coffee shop far from the hospital. Sarah told Jake everything. The conversations she'd overheard, Alexander's secret meetings, Olivia's suspicious behavior. Jake's face grew darker with each detail. "I knew something was wrong," he said. "Alexander's selling off company parts that Ethan spent years building. But without proof, we can't stop him." "What about the power of attorney?" Sarah asked. "Could it be fake? If it is, we need to find the original. But Alexander's got everything locked down tight." Back at the hospital that night, Sarah noticed something different about room 507. The security camera that usually pointed at the door was turned slightly away. "That's strange," she muttered to herself. She'd seen Alexander talking to hospital security earlier that day. When she entered Ethan's room, she found Olivia there, a rare sight at this hour. But something was off. Olivia was going through Ethan's personal belongings, the ones that had been stored since his accident. "Oh," Olivia jumped when she saw Sarah. "I was just looking for a picture for the press." Sarah nodded, pretending to believe her. But she noticed how Olivia's designer purse looked fuller than when she'd walked in. After Olivia left, Sarah did something she'd never done before. She went through the drawer herself. Several papers were missing, including what looked like the corner of a legal document. What was she looking for? Sarah wondered aloud. She turned to Ethan. "I wish you could tell me." Just then his fingers twitched again. This time Sarah was sure she wasn't imagining it. She pressed the call button and Dr. Roberts rushed in. "His brain activity is increasing," the doctor said, checking the monitors. "This is a good sign, but don't get too excited. Recovery from coma is a slow process." That night Sarah stayed late, holding Ethan's hand. "I know you're in there," she whispered. "We need you to wake up. Your brother and Olivia, they're not who you thought they were." Meanwhile, in a luxurious penthouse across town, Olivia was meeting with Alexander and Michael Davis. "Did you find it?" Alexander demanded. Olivia pulled some papers from her purse. The original power of attorney. It was in his personal things at the hospital. "And the real one? The one that expires next month?" "Gone," Olivia smiled. "Now no. One can prove your document is fake." Michael Davis poured champagne for them. "Once the merger goes through next week, it won't matter anyway. Thompson Technologies will be stripped and sold piece by piece." "What about that cleaning lady?" Olivia asked. "I don't like how she's always in his room." Alexander waved his hand dismissively. "She's nobody. A minimum wage worker. Who's going to believe her over us?" But Alexander didn't know about Sarah's conversation with Jake. He didn't know that Jake had started his own investigation. And he certainly didn't know that his brother's brain was slowly waking up, processing more and more of the conversations around him. In her apartment that night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the missing papers, about Ethan's twitching fingers, about everything that was at stake. Her phone lit up with a text from Jake. "Found something. Meet tomorrow before your shift. Bring any hospital records you can get." Sarah hugged Mr. Whiskers close. "I'm scared," she admitted to her cat. "But somebody has to help him." In the quiet hospital room, Ethan's brain continued its slow journey, back to consciousness. In his dreams, he heard a gentle voice reading stories, felt a warm hand holding his, sensed that something was terribly wrong with his company. The machines tracking his brain activity showed more and more spikes of awareness. Like a man swimming up from the depths of a dark ocean, Ethan Thompson was fighting his way back, and when he finally broke through to the surface, he would find his world completely changed. His brother a traitor, his fiancée a thief, his company in danger. But he would also find something he never expected, a guardian angel in a cleaning uniform fighting to protect everything he'd worked for. Jake waited for Sarah at their usual coffee shop, a thick folder on the table in front of him. Dark circles under his eyes showed he hadn't slept much. "I found something big," he said as soon as Sarah sat down. "Look at this." He pulled out a document. "This is a copy of the real power of attorney Ethan signed. It expires next month and it has limits. Alexander can't sell major company assets without board approval." Sarah leaned forward. "But the one Alexander's using gives him complete control. It has to be fake." Jake ran his hands through his hair. "But without the original document to prove it, we can't stop him." "Olivia took some papers from Ethan's things yesterday," Sarah said. Could that be what she was looking for? Jake's phone buzzed. His face went pale as he read the message. "They've called an emergency board meeting for tomorrow. Alexander's pushing the merger through early." At the hospital that evening, Sarah found a bouquet of expensive roses in Ethan's room. The card read, "To my darling, get well soon, love, Olivia." But Sarah had seen Olivia's assistant dropping them off. Olivia hadn't even bothered to come herself. "Your fiancé sent flowers," Sarah told Ethan as she adjusted his pillows, but I think she sent her heart somewhere else a long time ago. She checked his vital signs, something she'd learned to do over the months. His brain activity was definitely increasing. The doctor says you might be able to hear us now, she said softly. If you can, you need to know something. Your brother Alexander is trying to sell your company. He's working with Michael Davis. They're using a fake power of attorney. The heart monitor beeped a little faster. Jake is trying to stop them, but we need proof. The real document. Do you remember where else you might have kept a copy? In his mind, Ethan was screaming. He could hear everything now, had been hearing more and more over the past few days. He tried desperately to move, to speak, to give some sign that he understood. His fingers twitched again, more strongly this time. Sarah grabbed his hand. Ethan, can you hear me? Squeeze my hand if you can hear me. A weak pressure on her fingers made her gasp. Oh my God, she whispered. You're really there. She ran to get Dr. Roberts, who confirmed that Ethan was showing signs of emerging from his coma. Don't get too excited, the doctor warned. It could still take days or weeks for him to fully wake up. But he can hear us, Sarah asked. Most likely, yes. Sarah rushed to call Jake with the news, but as she stepped into the hallway, she overheard a conversation that made her blood run cold. The board meeting is at 9 tomorrow, Alexander was saying to someone on the phone. Once they sign the merger agreement, it's done. Even if Ethan wakes up, he can't undo it. Sarah's hands shook as she dialed Jake's number. Jake, Alexander's pushing the merger through tomorrow morning. Damn it, Jake swore. We need more time. Without proof that power of attorney is fake. Wait, Sarah interrupted. Ethan squeezed my hand today. He can hear us. He's starting to wake up. That's great news, but it's not enough. The doctors won't declare him competent in time for the meeting. Sarah looked back at Ethan's room. What if we could get Alexander to confess? If we had a recording, that would work, Jake said slowly. But how? Leave it to me, Sarah said. That night, Sarah did something that could get her fired. Or worse. She hid her phone in Ethan's room, recording everything. Then she waited. Sure enough, just before midnight, Alexander came to visit his brother. But he wasn't alone. Michael Davis was with him. Everything's ready for tomorrow, Alexander said. The board will approve the merger, thinking they're saving the company. By the time they realize we're stripping it for parts, it'll be too late. And the power of attorney? Michael asked. Alexander laughed. My little forgery is working perfectly. And now that Olivia's destroyed the real one, no one can prove it's fake. In his bed, Ethan's fingers curled into a fist. His brother's betrayal, heard in his own words, cut deep. Sarah, listening from the hallway, prayed her phone was picking everything up. Across town, in her luxury apartment, Olivia was packing a suitcase. A first-class ticket to the Maldives lay on her bed, along with a bank statement showing a very large new deposit. The pieces were all in place. Tomorrow would change everything, but maybe not in the way Alexander and his partners planned. And in room 507, Ethan Thompson fought harder than ever to break free from the darkness. The woman he'd trusted most had betrayed him. The brother he'd loved had stolen from him, but a voice he'd grown to know, a gentle voice that read him stories and shared her hopes, gave him something to fight for. That voice belonged to someone who cared about him. Not his money, not his power, but him. Now he just had to wake up in time to save everything he'd built, and maybe find something even more valuable in the process. Sarah's hands trembled as she retrieved her phone from Ethan's room early the next morning. She'd worked the night shift, her heart pounding every time she heard footsteps in the hallway. Now everything depended on what her phone had recorded. She played the recording back, holding her breath. Alexander's voice came through clearly. My little forgery is working perfectly. Thank God, she whispered. She sent the recording to Jake right away. Jake called her immediately. This is exactly what we needed, but we have to move fast. The board meeting starts in 2 hours. What should I do? Stay with Ethan. If he shows any more signs of waking up, call me immediately. Sarah went back to Ethan's room. His face looked different somehow, less peaceful, more determined. The doctors had said his brain activity was increasing. Was he fighting to wake up? "Ethan," she said, taking his hand. "If you can hear me, we got the proof. Jake is going to stop the merger. Your brother and Michael Davis confessed everything." His fingers twitched in response. "Your fiancée Olivia, she's involved too. She destroyed the real power of attorney document." Sarah's voice broke a little. "I'm so sorry. I know how much that must hurt." A single tear rolled down Ethan's cheek. Meanwhile, at Thompson Technologies, the board members were gathering for the emergency meeting. Alexander stood at the head of the table, looking confident in his expensive suit. "Gentlemen," he began, "today we take a crucial step to secure the future of—" The boardroom doors burst open. Jake walked in, followed by 2 police officers. "This meeting is over," Jake announced. "Alexander Thompson, you're being served with an injunction stopping this merger." Alexander's face went red. "On what grounds?" "Fraud." Jake held up his phone. "We have recorded evidence of you admitting to forging the power of attorney." "That's ridiculous," Alexander sputtered. "Who would dare?" "A cleaning lady," Jake said with a smile. "Someone you thought was nobody." One of the board members stood up. "Is this true, Alexander?" Before Alexander could answer, his phone rang. It was the hospital. At St. Luke's, everything had happened so fast. One minute Sarah had been talking to Ethan, the next his eyes had started to flutter. "Doctor," she had called out. "Come quickly!" Now Ethan was awake, groggy but conscious. His first word had been barely a whisper. "Sarah." Dr. Roberts checked his vital signs. "This is remarkable. He's fully conscious and aware." Sarah stood back, tears in her eyes. After all, these months after all her one-sided conversations, Ethan was looking right at her. "The company," he said hoarsely. "My brother." "It's okay," Sarah assured him. "Jake is taking care of everything." Back in the boardroom, chaos had erupted. The police were questioning Alexander, who had gone pale, reading the hospital message about Ethan's recovery. Michael Davis tried to slip out, but was stopped by security. Board members were shouting questions, demanding explanations. Jake's phone buzzed with a message from Sarah. "He's awake." Across town, Olivia was at the airport when she saw the news. Alert on her phone. Thompson Technologies CEO awakens, fraud scheme uncovered. She never made it to her flight. The police were waiting for her at the gate. In his hospital room, Ethan was slowly piecing everything together. Sarah sat beside him, still holding his hand. "You read to me," he said softly. "Every night." Sarah nodded, blushing. "You protected me, protected my company." His voice was getting stronger. "Why?" "Because." Sarah hesitated. How could she explain all the feelings that had grown over those months of one-sided conversations? "Because I got to know the real you, not the billionaire, not the CEO, just you." Ethan's eyes filled with tears. "I heard everything. Your voice. It was my anchor. It kept me fighting to come back." Outside the room, reporters were gathering, alerted by the dramatic events at Thompson Technologies. The story was exploding. The betrayal, the fraud, the awakening, all of it. But in room 507, none of that mattered. A man who had lost everything while he slept had woken to find something more precious than all his wealth. Someone who cared for him when he had nothing to give in return. "Sarah," Ethan said, his voice growing stronger by the minute, "would you read to me one more time?" She smiled through her tears. "I brought a new book today." "No romance novel this time?" "Actually." She pulled out the book. "It's a mystery." "I thought you might want something different." Ethan smiled, his first real smile since waking. "A mystery? I think I've had enough of those for a while." As Sarah opened the book, neither of them noticed the crowd of reporters outside, or the police leading Alexander away in handcuffs, or Olivia's face splashed across the news channels. They had found something rare in the most unexpected place. A love story that began with a coma and a cleaning cart, proving that sometimes the richest things in life can't be measured in dollars and cents. The next few days at St. Luke's Hospital were a whirlwind. Reporters camped outside, hoping to catch a glimpse of Ethan Thompson, the billionaire who had woken up to find his world turned upside down. Security guards had to be posted at every entrance. Sarah tried to keep her routine normal, but everything had changed. Now when she entered room 507, Ethan was awake, his blue eyes following her movements. She felt shy suddenly, after months of talking freely to him while he slept. "You're avoiding me," Ethan said one evening as she quickly changed his water pitcher. "No, I'm just busy," Sarah replied, not meeting his eyes. "Too busy to read to me." His voice was stronger now, though still raspy from months of disuse. "I miss our stories." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. "You remember all of them. Pieces. Sometimes just your voice, the feeling of not being alone." He reached for her hand. "Sarah, please sit with me. We need to talk." Before she could answer, Jake burst into the room, carrying a stack of papers. "Good news," Jake announced. "The police found the original power of attorney in Olivia's apartment. She hadn't destroyed it after all, kept it as insurance against Alexander." "How thoughtful of her," Ethan said dryly. "What's happening with the company?" "The board has temporarily suspended all major decisions until you're back, but..." Jake hesitated. "But what?" "The scandal has hurt our stock price. Michael Davis is trying to take advantage, making a hostile takeover bid." Ethan tried to sit up straighter, wincing at the effort. "I need to get back to the office." "You need to rest," Sarah said firmly, adjusting his pillows. Both men looked at her in surprise, the cleaning lady giving orders to the CEO. She blushed, but stood her ground. "Doctor's orders, at least another week of recovery." "She's right," Jake said, hiding a smile. "I can handle Davis for now. Focus on getting better." After Jake left, an awkward silence filled the room. Sarah busied herself organizing the flowers that had been pouring in since news of Ethan's recovery broke. "You're good at that," Ethan observed. "At what?" "Taking care of things, taking care of me." He paused. "Sarah, I remember something else from when I was in the coma. The night you discovered Alexander's plan. You were scared, but you did it anyway. Why?" Sarah focused on arranging a bouquet of lilies. "Because it was the right thing to do. Most people don't do the right thing when it's risky. Look at my brother, look at Olivia." The mention of Olivia made Sarah's stomach twist. The press was having a field day with the story of Ethan's faithless fiancée, painting him as the betrayed victim. "Have you talked to her?" Sarah asked quietly. "No. She's out on bail but not allowed to leave the country." Ethan's face hardened. "All those times she came here, putting on a show for the cameras while plotting with my brother." "I'm sorry," Sarah whispered. "Don't be. You were more real, more caring as my cleaning lady than she ever was as my fiancée." He caught her hand as she walked past. "Why did you really do it, Sarah?" "The truth." Sarah's heart pounded. How could she tell him that somewhere between reading stories and sharing her dreams, she'd fallen in love with him? It was crazy. He was Ethan Thompson, and she was just... A knock at the door saved her from answering. Dr. Roberts entered with Ethan's evening medication. "How's our miracle patient?" the doctor asked. "Ready to leave," Ethan said quickly. "Nice try. 1 more week minimum." Dr. Roberts turned to Sarah. "And how's our other miracle worker? The whole hospital's talking about you, you know. The cleaning lady who saved Thompson Technologies." Sarah wanted to disappear into the floor. "I was just doing my job." "Your job was cleaning floors, not exposing corporate fraud," Ethan pointed out. "Speaking of jobs, Sarah, would you consider..." "No," she cut him off, knowing what he was going to say. "Please don't offer me a job at your company." "Why not?" "Because I don't want anything from you. That's not why I helped." She grabbed her cart. "I should finish my rounds." She hurried out, leaving Ethan staring after her. In the hallway, she leaned against the wall, fighting tears. Everything was getting too complicated. Meanwhile, across town, Alexander sat in a jail cell waiting for his lawyer. His expensive suit had been replaced by prison orange. How had it all gone so wrong? That nobody cleaning lady had ruined everything. Olivia was in her apartment, surrounded by packed bags. Her phone kept ringing. Reporters wanting comments, lawyers wanting meetings. On TV, entertainment shows were calling it the scandal of the year. And at Thompson Technologies, Michael Davis was making his moves. The company might be wounded, but it was still valuable. If he played his cards right, he could still win. But Davis didn't know about the long hours Jake was putting in, strengthening their defenses. He didn't know about the loyal employees working overtime to protect their company. and he didn't know that in room 507, a man who had lost everything and found something more valuable was making plans of his own. Sarah, Ethan whispered to himself after she left. What am I going to do about you? The evening sun painted the hospital room in shades of gold. Outside, reporters waited for their story. Inside, a new story was just beginning, one that no one, not even Sarah, saw coming. A week had passed, and Ethan was finally being released. From the hospital, camera crews gathered outside St. Luke's, waiting to catch the first glimpse of the billionaire who had survived betrayal and corporate fraud. Sarah watched from the nurse's station as Ethan's private doctors helped him into a wheelchair. Hospital policy required all patients to leave in wheelchairs, even billionaires. You're not even going to say goodbye, Ethan called out when he saw her. Sarah hesitated, then walked over. She was wearing her usual blue uniform, a stark contrast to Ethan's expensive suit that Jake had brought for him. Goodbye, Mr. Thompson, she said formally. I wish you a speedy recovery. Mr. Thompson? Ethan raised an eyebrow. After everything we've been through. Before Sarah could respond, the elevator doors opened. Reporters had somehow made it up to the floor. Camera flashes exploded around them. Mr. Thompson, how does it feel to be betrayed? By your own brother? Any comment about Olivia Rothschild's involvement? Is it true you're selling the company? Security guards rushed to control the chaos. In the confusion, Sarah slipped away. She had a job to do, and it didn't involve press conferences or corporate drama. But as she pushed her cleaning cart down the hallway, a hand caught her arm. It was Jake. Sarah, wait. There's something you need to know. His face was serious. Michael Davis is making trouble. He's spreading rumors about Ethan's mental state, saying he's not fit to run the company. But that's not true. Dr. Roberts said he's made a full recovery. Davis has paid some so-called experts to say that coma patients often have lasting cognitive issues. He's trying to scare our shareholders. Sarah's hands clenched into fists. He can't get away with that. We need your help. As the person who spent the most time with Ethan during his coma, your testimony could be crucial. My testimony? Sarah laughed bitterly. I'm just a cleaning lady. Who's going to believe me? The same cleaning lady who exposed a multi-million-dollar fraud. Trust me, people will listen. Meanwhile, Ethan was being escorted through the hospital's private exit. His mind wasn't on the reporters or the company crisis. He kept thinking about Sarah's formal goodbye, the way she'd pulled away from him. In his town car, heading back to his penthouse, Ethan made a decision. He pulled out his phone. Jake? Change of plans. Take me to the office first. Are you sure that's wise? Jake asked. The doctors said to rest. There's something I need to do. At Thompson Technologies, the news of Ethan's release had caused a stir. Employees gathered in groups, whispering about what would happen next. The stock price had stabilized somewhat, but Michael Davis's accusations were causing new uncertainty. Sarah finished her shift at the hospital feeling empty. Room 507 was already prepared for a new patient. It was like Ethan had never been there. When she got home to her small apartment, Mr. Whiskers greeted her with his usual meow, but there was something different. A large envelope on her doorstep. Inside was a letter on Thompson Technologies' letterhead. Dear Ms. Miller, your presence is requested at an emergency board meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m. Your first-hand knowledge of recent events is vital to the future of our company. Transportation will be provided. Sincerely, Ethan Thompson, CEO, Thompson Technologies, Sarah. Sat on her worn couch, the letter trembling in her hands. Mr. Whiskers jumped into her lap, purring. What am I going to do? She asked her cat. I can't go to a board meeting. I don't belong in that world. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Please come tomorrow. I need you. E. Across town in his luxury penthouse, Ethan stood at his window looking out at the city lights. His doctors had told him to rest, but how could he? Michael Davis was trying to steal his company. His own brother and fiancée had betrayed him, and the one person he trusted most was pulling away from him. In her high-rise apartment, Olivia was meeting with her lawyer. There has to be a way out of this, she insisted. I can't go to prison. I'm Olivia Rothschild. And in a downtown office, Michael Davis was plotting his next move. Thompson is vulnerable, he told his associates. His own brother tried to steal his company. His fiancée betrayed him. He just spent months in a coma. The shareholders are nervous. The time to strike is now. But Davis didn't know about the letter sitting on Sarah's coffee table. He didn't know that the quiet cleaning lady who had brought down Alexander Thompson was about to step into the corporate battlefield. And he certainly didn't know what Ethan Thompson had planned for tomorrow's board meeting. Sarah finally picked up her phone and typed a response. "I'll be there." The stage was set for one final showdown, but this time the cleaning lady wouldn't be watching from the sidelines. This time she would be right in the middle of it all, and Ethan Thompson wouldn't have it any other way. Sarah stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror of her tiny apartment. She had put on her best dress, a simple blue one she'd bought on sale last year. It wasn't designer like Olivia's clothes, but it was all she had. A honk outside made her jump. The car Ethan had sent was waiting. "Wish me luck, Mr. Whiskers," she said to her cat, who watched her with knowing yellow eyes. The car was fancier than anything Sarah had ever been in. The driver opened the door for her like she was someone important. As they drove through the city, her stomach was in knots. At Thompson Technologies, the lobby was chaos. Reporters crowded outside, and security guards checked everyone's credentials carefully. When Sarah gave her name, she was whisked straight to the top floor. Jake was waiting for her. "Thank God you came. It's getting ugly in there." Through the glass walls of the conference room, Sarah could see Ethan at the head of the table. He looked tired, but determined in his expensive suit. Michael Davis sat halfway down the table, surrounded by men in similar suits. "The shareholders are nervous," Jake explained. "Quickly. Davis has convinced some of them that Ethan isn't fit to lead after the coma. He's offering to buy their shares at a premium. But that's ridiculous. Ethan is fine. We know that. But Davis has medical experts claiming that coma patients often have hidden cognitive issues." Jake lowered his voice. "That's where you come in. You spent more time with Ethan during his recovery than anyone. Your testimony could be crucial." Sarah's hands were shaking. "What do I say? Just tell the truth." The conference room doors opened, and Sarah walked in. Every head turned to look at her. She saw the doubt in their eyes. What was a cleaning lady doing here? Ethan stood up. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Sarah Miller. She's the reason we discovered my brother's fraud. She's also the person who spent the most time with me during my recovery." "With all due respect," Michael Davis interrupted, smoothly, "what could a cleaning lady possibly tell us about Mr. Thompson's medical condition?" "More than your paid experts," Jake shot back. Sarah took a deep breath. She thought about all those nights in room 507, about the stories she'd read, about the moment Ethan first squeezed her hand. "I was there every night," she began, her voice shaky at first but growing stronger. "I talked to Mr. Thompson, read to him. I saw his progression from complete unconsciousness to awareness. I was there when he started responding to voices, when his brain activity increased." "That's very touching," Davis said with a condescending smile. "But we need professional medical opinions, not sentimental stories." "Professional?" Sarah felt anger replacing her fear. "Like the doctors you paid to say what you wanted? I was there when Mr. Thompson woke up." His first words were clear and coherent. He immediately understood what his brother had done and took steps to stop it. She turned to the board members. "You all received expensive reports saying coma patients have cognitive issues. But did any of you actually visit Mr. Thompson in the hospital? Did you see how he improved day by day? Or did you just read what Mr. Davis wanted you to read?" The room was silent. Several board members looked uncomfortable. "Ms. Miller," one elderly board member spoke up, "you said you read to Mr. Thompson. What did you read?" "Everything. Novels, newspapers, company reports I found in his room. He remembered them all when he woke up. He could quote passages I'd read months before." Davis stood up, his face red. "This is absurd. We're listening to a cleaning lady over medical experts. The same cleaning lady who exposed your partner Alexander?" Ethan's voice was quiet but firm. "The same one who risked her job to save this company while you were trying to steal it." He pressed a button and a screen lowered from the ceiling. "Let's talk about your medical experts, Mr. Davis." Jake stepped forward with a stack of papers. "We've traced payments from Davis Industries to 3 of the doctors who claimed Ethan was unfit to lead. Each received $100,000 the day before submitting their reports. The board members began to whisper among themselves. Davis's face went from red to pale. That's a lie. Like the lies you spread about my condition? Ethan stood up, his full height impressive. Like the lies you told our shareholders. Sarah watched as the man who had seemed so powerful minutes ago began to crumble, but she wasn't prepared for what happened next. Ethan walked around the table and took her hand. Sarah Miller did more than save our company. During my darkest hours, when my own family and fiancé betrayed me, she was the only one who cared. About me as a person, not a dollar sign. The boardroom was dead silent. Everyone stared at their joined hands. I think, the elderly board member said slowly, we've heard enough. I move to reject Mr. Davis's takeover bid and reaffirm our confidence in Ethan Thompson's leadership. Seconded, another member quickly added. The vote was unanimous. Michael Davis stormed out, his grand plan in ruins. As the board members filed out, many stopped to shake Sarah's hand. She felt dazed, overwhelmed by it all. Sarah. Ethan still hadn't let go of her hand. We need to talk. But before he could say more, his assistant rushed in. Mr. Thompson, the press is waiting for a statement, and the district attorney wants to meet about Alexander's case. Sarah gently pulled her hand away. You should go, you have a company to run. She turned to leave, but Ethan's voice stopped her. This isn't over, Sarah. We have unfinished business. As she rode the elevator down, Sarah's heart was pounding. She had done what she came to do. She had helped save Ethan's company. So why did she feel like she just lost something precious? In his office upstairs, Ethan watched her leave through his window. He picked up his phone. Jake, I need you to do something for me. Find out everything you can about Sarah Miller's dream of becoming a nurse. A month had passed since the dramatic board meeting. Sarah's life had returned to normal, or as normal as it could be after everything that had happened. She still cleaned rooms at St. Luke's Hospital, but now people whispered when she passed by. That's her, the cleaning lady who saved Thompson Technologies. Room 507 had a new patient, an elderly woman who loved to talk about her grandchildren. But sometimes late at night, Sarah would stop in the doorway and remember different times, different conversations. She hadn't seen Ethan since the board meeting. The newspapers were full of stories about his remarkable recovery, about Michael Davis's failed takeover, about Alexander and Olivia's upcoming trials, but Sarah tried not to read them. You miss him, Nancy, one of the nurses, said one evening. Don't try to deny it. He was just a patient, Sarah replied, focusing on mopping the floor. Honey, I've been a nurse for 30 years. He was never just a patient to you. Before Sarah could respond, the hospital administrator appeared in the hallway. Ms. Miller, could you come to my office? Sarah's heart sank. Was she in trouble? Had someone complained about her talking to patients? But when she entered the office, she found not only the administrator, but also Jake Mitchell, Ethan's lawyer and friend. Please sit down, the administrator said kindly. We have something to discuss with you. Jake pulled out an envelope. Sarah, do you remember telling Ethan about your dream of becoming a nurse? Sarah nodded slowly. She had mentioned it during those long nights when she would talk to him in his coma. The Thompson Foundation has established a new scholarship program, Jake continued. Full tuition for hospital employees who want to advance their medical education. You're the first recipient. Sarah stared at the envelope. I can't accept that. It's not charity, Jake said quickly. The foundation will sponsor several employees each year. You earned this, Sarah. But the hospital has already approved your schedule change, the administrator added. You can take classes during the day and work evening shifts. Everything's arranged. Sarah felt tears in her eyes. Did Ethan do this? The foundation board made the decision, Jake said diplomatically, though I believe Mr. Thompson spoke quite highly of your potential. Meanwhile, across town, Ethan sat in his office at Thompson Technologies. The company had recovered from the crisis, stock prices were up, and Michael Davis had slunk away to lick his wounds. But Ethan wasn't looking at the financial reports on his desk. Instead, he was staring at a worn paperback book, one of the romance novels Sarah had read to him during his coma. Sir, his assistant poked her head in. Your brother's lawyers are here to discuss the plea deal. Ethan sighed. Alexander was facing serious charges, but his lawyers were pushing for a reduced sentence in exchange for testimony against Michael Davis. Send them in. The meeting was long and tense. Alexander had betrayed him, tried to steal his company, but he was still his brother. The best we can hope for is 5 years, the lead lawyer concluded. With good behavior, he could be out in 3. Fine, Ethan said. I'll agree to support the plea deal, but I want something in return. What's that? Alexander signs over his shares in the company to the Thompson Foundation, the new charitable foundation I've established. The lawyers huddled together, whispering. Finally, they nodded. After they left, Ethan called Jake. Did you give Sarah the scholarship news? Yes. She was overwhelmed and suspicious. Suspicious? She thinks it's charity. You know how independent she is, Ethan smiled. Despite himself, yes, he knew. It was one of the things he respected about her. The foundation will help lots of people, he said firmly. Sarah's just the first. Right, Jake's voice was skeptical. And the fact that the foundation's first project is a nursing scholarship program has nothing to do with a certain cleaning lady's dream. Jake, you know, you could just talk to her, tell her how you feel. I'm the CEO of Thompson Technologies. She's the woman who saved your life and your company, the person who cared about you when you had nothing, the one you can't stop thinking about. Ethan was silent. The press has moved on, Jake continued. Alexander's taking a plea deal. Olivia's probably making a deal too. You're free to live your life, Ethan. The question is, what are you waiting for? In her small apartment, Sarah sat on her couch, staring at the scholarship letter. Mr. Whiskers rubbed against her legs, purring. What do you think? She asked her cat. Should I accept? Her phone buzzed with a text. It was from Nancy, the nurse. Turn on channel 7 now. Sarah grabbed her remote. The news was showing Ethan leaving the courthouse after Alexander's plea deal meeting. He looked tired but handsome in his suit. Mr. Thompson, a reporter called out. Any comment on your brother's plea deal? Ethan stopped. Everyone deserves a second chance, he said. Then looking directly into the camera, he added, sometimes life's greatest gifts come disguised as setbacks. Sometimes the people who seem least important turn out to be the most precious. Sarah's heart stopped. Was he? Her doorbell rang. When she opened it, Ethan Thompson was standing there holding a book, one of the romance novels she had read to him. I never got to hear how this one ends, he said softly. Sarah stood frozen in her doorway, her heart pounding. Behind her, Mr. Whiskers meowed curiously at their visitor, and somewhere in New York City, a new story was about to begin. Sarah stared at Ethan standing in her doorway, the romance novel in his hands. He looked different in casual clothes, more like the man she'd talked to during those quiet hospital nights, less like the powerful CEO. How did you find my apartment? She asked, still not moving from the doorway. I'm a billionaire, remember? When she frowned, he smiled. Jake gave me your address. May I come in? Sarah stepped aside, suddenly very aware of her small apartment with its second-hand furniture. Mr. Whiskers approached Ethan curiously. Nice cat, Ethan said, bending down to pet him. Mr. Whiskers, usually shy with strangers, purred loudly. Traitor, Sarah muttered to her cat. Then to Ethan, why are you here? You've been avoiding me. I haven't been avoiding you. I've been working. Some of us have regular jobs. And nursing school soon. Ethan straightened up. Why didn't you? Tell me about the scholarship. Because I'm not taking it, Sarah. It's charity. I don't want your charity, Ethan. He stepped closer to her. Is that what you think, that after everything we've been through, everything you did for me, I'm offering you charity? Sarah's heart was pounding. He was standing so close she could smell his expensive cologne. Why else would you do it? Because every night while I was in that coma, you sat with me, you read to me, you talked to me about your dreams. And even though I couldn't respond, I fell in love with your voice, your kindness, your spirit. Sarah's breath caught. What did you say? I fell in love with you, Sarah Miller. Not out of gratitude, not because you saved my company, but because you saw me, the real me, when I had nothing. Ethan, Sarah's voice trembled. You're the CEO of a major corporation. I'm a cleaning lady. No, he said softly. You're the woman who risked everything to save me. You're the one who read romance novels to an unconscious man because you thought he might be lonely. You're the one who dreams of helping people as a nurse, the cleaning job. That's what you do, not who you are." He reached out and touched her cheek. "When I woke up and found out about my brother's betrayal, about Olivia's lies, I should have been devastated. But all I could think about was you. Your voice had been my anchor in the darkness, and now I can finally do this." He leaned down and kissed her softly. Sarah felt the world spin around her. This had to be a dream, but it wasn't a dream. This was real. Ethan Thompson was in her tiny apartment, kissing her like she was the most precious thing in the world. When they finally broke apart, Sarah whispered, "What about the press? The shareholders, won't they let them talk?" Ethan smiled. "Besides, the shareholders love you. You saved their investments. And the press, well, they're calling it the greatest love story of the year." "They are?" Billionaire finds true love while in coma. The ratings are apparently amazing. Sarah laughed despite herself. "You're making that up." "Maybe. But our story is better than any romance novel you read to me." He held up the book he'd brought. Speaking of which, they settled on Sarah's worn couch, Mr. Whiskers curled up between them. As Ethan opened the book, Sarah felt tears in her eyes. "What's wrong?" he asked. I never thought that a cleaning lady and a CEO could fall in love." He took her hand. "Sarah, you taught me that the best things in life can't be measured in dollars. You showed me what real loyalty and love look like." 1 year later, the headlines read, "Thompson Technologies CEO marries nurse in training." The ceremony was small, held in the garden of St. Luke's Hospital. Sarah wore a simple white dress, Ethan a suit without a tie. Mr. Whiskers served as ring-bearer, wearing a tiny bow tie. Jake was best man. Nancy, now Sarah's nursing school mentor, was matron of honor. The elderly patient from room 507 sat in the front row crying happy tears. Alexander, out on good behavior to attend the wedding, watched from the back, reflecting on how differently things had turned out. Olivia, serving community service after her plea deal, saw the photos in the society pages she once dominated. The Thompson Foundation had expanded, helping dozens of hospital workers pursue their medical dreams. Sarah, almost done with her first year of nursing school, was their greatest success story. But the real story wasn't in the headlines. It was in the quiet moments. Sarah studying late at night while Ethan read contracts, both of them on their couch with Mr. Whiskers between them. It was in the way Ethan still asked Sarah to read to him every night, claiming he slept better, hearing her voice. It was in the way they returned to room 507 every month, bringing books to read to patients in comas. Their love story hadn't ended like the romance novels Sarah used to read. It had become something better, something real. "You know," Ethan said one night as they walked through the hospital halls where it all began, "I never thanked you." "For what?" "For seeing me when I was invisible. For loving me when I had nothing." Sarah squeezed his hand. "You were never nothing, Ethan. You were just waiting to wake up to what really mattered." They stopped outside room 507, now occupied by a young accident victim. Sarah pulled a book from her bag. She always carried one, just in case. "Shall we?" she asked. Ethan smiled and opened the door. Together they entered the room, ready to pass on the gift of story and hope to someone else lost in the darkness. Because sometimes the greatest love stories start in the most unexpected places. Sometimes a cleaning lady and a billionaire in a coma can find something more precious than all the money in the world. And sometimes, just sometimes, happy endings do come true.